What's the good word, y'all? It's your boy DKB here. It's day 8 of New York Jets training camp practice, and the biggest news of today is we finally have the entire starting 5 offensive line members on the field practicing together during team drills. I can't say it enough, and one of you mentioned this in the comments when we were talking about defense, but this 100% applies to the New York Jets offense as well. The chemistry on the offensive line is the biggest thing that we need to secure this offseason, right? Individually, many of these players are talented, and I would even make the argument that some of these backups could come away and get away with some of their early deficiencies with as many talents as we have on this offensive line, with the athleticism that a lot of these guys carry on the offensive line. And so Morgan Moses was the last piece. He finally returned. He is going to be on a pitch count, right? So even though they're all together, don't think this is going to be how do I want to say this, like an overly exercised, I guess, unit together, right? Morgan Moses is on a pitch count. Tyron is going to be on a special vet schedule while they try to make sure he is as healthy for as many regular season games as possible. And then you have AVT on the pitch count. So realistically, you have John Simpson, and he's been getting subbed out a lot while players are being held accountable for pre-snap penalties. And then you have Joe Tippmann, and he's ironing out some of the snap issues that he's dealing with. But overall, 2 of your 5 guys will consistently be on the field, and hopefully you get enough team periods together that by the time we get to week 1, these guys feel good, and it's not so drastic. Morgan Moses and AVT at least have some comfortability together before from when we originally had Morgan Moses on the team. But wholesale, it's a reconstructed line, so it is what it is. In terms of other injury news, though, and just relevant absences, etc., Michael Carter II still out with an ankle. Jake Hansen, the guard, still out with a leg injury. Xavier Gipson also out with a leg injury. Tack, we have found out he's dealing with a foot issue. Sounds like we expect him to come back relatively soon. Malik Taylor wasn't available today. We have no idea why. And then Sauce Gardner was out for an excused absence. So, overall, things are going fairly well for the New York Jets. By this time last year, it feels like we've had 2 or 3 critical injuries. The first hurdle is going to be getting out of these joint practices healthy. And by the way, before we dive into some of the on-field work, tomorrow, or at least Saturday, by the time you guys are seeing this, is going to kick off the live game atmosphere, right? So there's going to be a full kickoff. There's going to be ones playing against the ones, second string versus second string, etc., and I believe Salah said we are essentially playing 2 full halves. So very excited to see what happens there. Should give some ample reps to some of these lower tier guys, some of which has been standing out in a big way. But the news today is there was another strong day by the offense, but there's rising stars, it feels like, all throughout this roster on both sides of the ball. Garrett Wilson came away with another 3-touchdown day today, and I believe that gives him 3 or 6 in the last 2 practices together. Had a touchdown during the, I call it the gotta have it drill. They're essentially down, right, which is what the script is, and they need to get the points, right, either a field goal to win or a touchdown, either a field goal or a touchdown to tie, or if they're only down 3, TD to win. Broken coverage, so it wasn't necessarily anything where Garrett Wilson, crushed whoever was across from him, but still, it's nice to see that we can take advantage of plays like that. The last one I can realistically recall was probably Fitzmagic and Brandon Marshall, and I want to say it was against the Dolphins, where somehow somebody decided not to line up against him until the very last seconds before the snap. Overall, though, he had another catch to start off practice, which it sounds small, but that also speaks volumes to me, because it says that Aaron Rodgers understands the mentality of a wide receiver 1, and that you want to get him fed and involved often and early, which hasn't been the case from his experience. And then he also had himself a red zone touchdown. One of the other interesting pieces that have stood out to me is that for a handful of practices now, and this hasn't necessarily been consecutive, but there's been pitch issues between Rodgers and Brees. So I say pitch pitch specifically, right? It's not a handoff. It's him tossing the ball out there, and for whatever reason, there's fumbles. Doesn't seem like there's really a defensive player impacting this at all. So, little shaky with the hands from Brees, or maybe it's the Rodgers and Brees just, out of sync. Not sure, but something to be mindful of there. We'll see if it pops up at any point during maybe the final Giants preseason game. Braylon, another strong couple days here for this specific practice. He was noted to have some strong cutback runs. Alan Lazard back with having at least a solid catch or two every day. This one he beat out Reed on a back shoulder throw from Rodgers. And then you have Brownlee, who's been able to make some noise now for 2 practices back to back. Had himself a touchdown from Tyrod, and then he also had a big catch that helped set them up for some red zone opportunities. So Brownlee needs to make up a lot of ground here. Unfortunately for him, there are a lot of guys that have been stepping up so far, again, on both sides of the ball, and he's not going to be a special teams ace, so he has even more work to do to prove that he brings enough in the receiving game to make it worth having him on the roster. Tyler Conklin, 2 touchdowns today, had himself a jump ball versus JBC, and we'll talk about him here shortly again as well, with Rodgers throwing him the ball, and then he had a touchdown on a free play because Jalen Holmes had an encroachment penalty, and also as part of us having those practices tomorrow, we'll actually have refs for the first time all training camp. Now, to get in some of the defensive highlights, I don't have a ton, but these guys were worth highlighting. Clemens, for as much I guess disrespect as I've seen us give him for being on the first string unit, and it doesn't seem warranted, he still has proven that his run defense is impeccable, borderline, if not elite. Had himself a strong day setting the edge and having other guys help clean up stuff if he couldn't make the play himself. So just keep in mind that is the reason why he's technically listed as a starter over a guy like Will McDonald, specifically when we are in our base packages and we're not going dime or utilizing some other, NASCAR packages or something like that. Ashton Davis had himself a day, maybe the best player on defense of the day. Had himself a sack versus Tyrod, a forced fumble versus Conklin, and there were multiple pass breakups across the field. Now, it doesn't seem like he's as involved in this open competition as it was mentioned by Saleh earlier on, but he definitely seems like he's kind of picking up from where he left off last season as that third safety in rotation, sometimes in a combo package on the field, slot linebacker hybrid, and he's going to find a way to make plays at a ridiculous rate. Impact plays, right? Turnover worthy stuff, forced fumbles, INTs, etc. And then Jarrick Bernard, Converse. He stood out since going back to cornerback in a way that I don't think any of us really would have expected based on what we've seen from him coming out of college and how hyped up the coaching staff was about him going to safety and bringing those traits there. But he's really having himself a surging offseason so far. He had a pass breakup versus Wilson deep, and he's really just been flying around. He's been knocking guys left and right, batting balls down. I think the only thing he hasn't done on a day-by-day basis is turnovers, and it'll come, right? You're still talking about a guy that's a day 3 pick here and didn't have a healthy offseason last year. So if this was the guy we were getting last year, there's going to be some pretty solid progression out of him. But let me know what you guys think about the 8 practice. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow in the game scenario situations, and I'll catch you guys again. Peace.